Now, what if I told you that there was an alternative ending for Joe Goldberg in You that Netflix decided not to use? Well, there is. It's not the ending that I created, but rather the one that was written by the author of the books, Caroline Kepnes. The fourth book for You and Only You is the most recent installment in the novels, and after Netflix drifted away from the books in season 3 of the show and only taking the odd part, the end of Joe Goldberg was one that I felt like it wouldn't be in line with what happened to him in the books. So I thought I'd take a look at what happened to Joe Goldberg in the fourth and final installment of the story and determine if it's better or worse than what Netflix gave us. Judging by the rating that the finale got, one would have to imagine that it's gonna be better, right? Well, let's dive into it and see if Netflix were right not to use it. Here is Joe Goldberg's alternative ending in You. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. When it came to the ending that the show gave us, it was definitely one that left us all feeling a little bit shortchanged. However, after seeing what many people also thought about the final novel in the series, many claimed that it's the worst book in the entire collection and that the ending for Joe wasn't what they wanted or expected. Maybe that's telling of the story and the world that was created. Is it a surprisingly difficult journey to finish? You'd think not. However, on the 2 occasions that the story wrapped up, it's deemed to have failed. The story in the final novel is definitely different to what we had in the final season of the show, but there are traces of similarities that occur more so towards the end. In the 4th book, Joe is trying to become an author and is leaning more into his writing skills, kind of similar to what we saw in season 5 as he hit the typewriter a lot. And with him looking to write more, he gets into a writing fellowship that's highly regarded at Harvard University. This is something that Joe had always dreamed of participating in due to his love of writing. However, once he got there, he realized that it was full of people that didn't necessarily have the talent to be there, rather the wealth and status to buy their way in. This is kind of reminiscent of season 4 when Joe was in England and he was around people that he didn't connect with in the slightest due to the status that they had. However, amongst all of the egos that caused the room to feel loud and distorted, Joe met a love interest called Wonder Parish. Wonder Parish was somebody who shared a similar story to his, in the sense that she didn't come from a privileged background and she actually cared about and had a talent for writing and literature. So she essentially became his You. Wonder was a canvas that Joe thought he could leave his mark on and essentially mold into the perfect partner for him, envisaging a life together in the image that he created, like he thought he could have done with Beck and also Love. So it's an interesting love interest from the off. There's no Bronte in this story, there's no catfishing reveal, it's just Joe falling for somebody that he has similarities with and feels could be the perfect match, the cycle that we became so used to seeing over the years. You could argue that Bronte could have been inspired by Wonder because she was also somebody that was into her literature and was originally a student of Beck's learning how to write. But that's as far as the comparison goes. Joe essentially embarked on becoming obsessed with her and his stalking, possessive nature took over until his absence due to a certain character that I'll get onto caused Wonder to be driven away. However, whilst Joe's infatuation with Wonder was strong and was desperate to get her back, there was another girl that entered his life in a completely different way. This was Sarah Beth, a fellow wannabe writer at Harvard University and somebody that had her suspicions about Joe. A true crime podcast was revealed and was being listened to amongst the writers, and it was all about a case that Joe was involved in. This does also feel very similar to what happened in the show with the true crime group looking to take down Joe Goldberg and ultimately going public with them believing Joe was involved in multiple murders. As Sarah Beth did some digging, she started to believe that it could have been Joe that was responsible for the murder that was on the podcast. As she spent more time with him, she started to wonder about Joe's past and became increasingly suspicious about his character, the type of person that he was, and what he had the capability of doing. With Joe being aware of those suspicions, he broke into her writing space to see what evidence she had on him or what she'd written, and it was here where a trap was triggered and it caused him to be stuck there. With Sarah Beth returning, surprisingly, Joe admitted to a multitude of murders that he did, which dated all the way back to Guinevere Beck. And unluckily for him, it was all recorded on tape. This meant that Sarah Beth had something over Joe and she had the capability of blackmailing him whenever she wanted to. This is something that sparked some kind of shared alliance between the both of them, in a weird way that you'd only really ever see in You. Sarah Beth didn't really care that Joe killed all of those people because it was good inspiration for her crime writing, which is what she wanted to make a success of, so she didn't go to the authorities. When it came to the original love interest Wonder, their relationship essentially started to break down due to her seeing Joe for the person that he truly was, and she ultimately decided that she didn't want to be with Joe. Even though she saw that Joe wasn't this charming person that originally wooed her, she didn't believe that he was a murderer, despite the fact that he actually admitted to her that he was. So in the end, they parted ways, which is a slightly different approach for a relationship breakdown for Joe. Usually, Joe Goldberg kills if he doesn't get the love interest that he wants. Beck, Love, and he even tried to kill Marion in the TV series, so letting somebody go was a different approach, and one that I'm not the largest fan of. During the ending of the novel, it's kind of left down to us to decide whether or not Joe is going to eventually kill Sarah Beth or not. It doesn't explicitly tell us what he's going to do, but the fact that Joe knows that somebody has tape recordings of him confessing to a large list of murders, it's not something that I imagine he's going to allow to stand for a large period of time. Or on the flip side, could Sarah Beth have been somebody that was actually going to go to the police and Joe was actually going to face justice and punishment for all of the lives that he destroyed? So it's left down to us to decide what happens to the character. Within the novel, it's a difficult one to place because a character like Joe deserves an ending where you do either see him face justice for the crimes that he committed, he ends up dead, or his life gets absolutely ruined. And the author didn't allow that to happen to the character. He just kinda got away with it all, and it was left down to us to decide whether he'd continue down the pathway of killing, with Sarah Beth being his next victim, essentially planting him right back where he was at the beginning of the story and showing us that Joe was never going to change. Or the prospect on if he was going to go to jail, with Sarah telling the authorities and giving them the tapes. So it doesn't quite sound like the dramatic ending that gives closure, which I think feels just as shortchanged as the finale of the TV series. So when it comes to both endings, like I did with Love Quinn, let's answer which one was better, the TV series or the novel that Netflix decided to steer away from. Personally, even though I had issues with the way that Netflix decided to end the show by them not giving us a trial, not connecting back to his mother, and with it also feeling a little underwhelming with the way that Joe was caught. At least he was actually caught, faced punishment for what he did, and there were some powerful symbolic moments in the build-up, such as Mooney's being burned to the ground with him inside of it, and also with Joe begging Louise to kill him because he didn't want to be alone in jail. In the novels, there was none of that. Joe was caught at the end of Hidden Bodies, the second novel, and he managed to get found not guilty for the crimes that he committed due to Love's family paying for all of his legal fees. So by writing that into the story so early on, it kind of left no room for Joe to face punishment in the end. And that's exactly what we saw happening. Instead, the ambiguity of an ending in a story that was filled with such action and played with the morals in your own mind because you found yourself being charmed by Joe like many of the people in the story just doesn't quite allow it to be as dramatic as it should have been. There was no comeuppance for Joe, only the potential threat of it being on the horizon. I get that it gives the woman all of the power in the relationship with Joe, which is something that never really happened, so it reverses the roles. But it's not enough to warrant that being the final ending of a character. I almost question if it was left ambiguous because there might be a plan to return to the character and the story one day, which would make sense as to why it wasn't actually that strong. So for me, I'd say the dramatics of the TV series and Joe actually facing punishment is what is the better ending. So, there you have it, Joe Goldberg's alternative ending in You. If you want to see how I felt You should have actually ended, then check the video below. I wrote an ending myself, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. Which ending do you prefer? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.